Hey everybody, welcome back to another JBoz gaming video. This is your host JBoz, and today we're going to look at some gameplay of mine where you can see what I mean when I say controlled aggression. World of Tanks is a game where there are times where it is appropriate for you to sit back and try to determine where the enemy is. And then there is time to get hyper aggressive and go after your target. And so now, when I say hyper aggressive, that really depends on the tank. For example, if you're in a slow heavy or tank destroyer, you're obviously not going to run out and just attack somebody, but you're definitely going to pursue that attack. You're instead of staying behind cover, you're actually going to come out and put down some damage. With light tanks, it's a little bit different. And in this video, I'm going to show you kind of a light tank gameplay. Now, uh, again, I do not show my gameplay footage to embarrass anyone. So any player that's in this video that happens to get destroyed by me. I'm not saying you played badly. I'm not trying to point out or make an example of you in the video. So please just take it for what it is. This is an example video for maybe yourself or even others to learn from. Uh, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So this 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 battle specifically happened on Cliff, and I haven't done a strategic map for Cliff yet. But basically, Cliff plays kind of three avenues: middle, right flank, and left flank. I decided to go up the right flank initially. So notice right out of the gate. Let me kind of back up a second and talk about what I'm doing in the very first part of the battle, because we talk about this in our training videos. And I really want you guys to understand that you have to look at your opponents before you begin the match. It is critical when you're learning the tanks, when you're learning, the tiers that you're playing at, and going through what I call a threat progression is absolutely critical at the start of the battle. Notice that the first thing that I do is I bring up the kind of big map screen, and then I get rid of the big map and I just look at the player list. So I kind of enlarge it, and I quickly go through each of the enemy tanks, and that's what I'm doing here. Is just looking at each one. Now I'm going to pause this video because I'm doing this very quickly in my mind, and you will have to get better at this and quicker at this because we have basically 8 seconds before the match starts. And so I do this very rapidly as I first look to see, again, if there's any players that I know that happen to be good players on the other side. I make note of players that potentially are in a platoon. In this case, there are no platoons, but I do make note of that these players aren't going to play necessarily together. And then I also note anyone that might be in a clan, because a clan generally will indicate someone is at least got someone else to talk to, maybe is learning the game a little bit more than others. So I give them a little of a step up on the threat level. Okay. And then I quickly go through the tanks and say, okay, what tanks are a threat to me? I'm in a Tier 4 M5A1 Stuart. And as you can see here on the enemy team, they have a Cheehy, an M3 Lee. They have an HMC M8, which I note as a threat. If he has the derp gun, he might be a problem. They also have a premium A32 on the other side, which is also a pretty good tank. So I make a note of that. And then they also have an M5A1 Stuart. So I note that. And then I move forward. And they do have an American Stuart, which is not really a threat to me. They do have an A20 fast tank, but really not a threat to me. And then they have a Hetzer. The Hetzer with the derp gun can be a threat to me. They can take me out in a single shot with my 340 hit points. So I make a note that they have a Tier 4 Hetzer. And then I also note that they round out their tank destroyers with a Marder 38T and a Su 85B. So, these are kind of the threats. And then I look at lower tiers just to see if there's any particular tank that I would be concerned about. And there is. And that's the Artie. So I always make special note of an Artie, whether it's at tier or below tier. And this happens to be a very good lower tier Artie, the Sexton 1. So that's a problem. So I already know, starting this battle, that I've got a few threats out there. And until I've identified where they are, I'm not going to attack over aggressively. I'm going to try to figure out where the enemy has decided to make their attack and then react accordingly. As you will see, this game will go south very quickly because my allies, the green team, apparently are either new or just don't understand the map or just aren't skilled players. Whatever that will be, we'll talk at the end about why we lose this battle. All right, let's get into it. Again, I look at the overall map just to see where I'm located real quick, and then I'm ready to start the battle. Now, as you're driving, you can also bring up the player map again to check if you haven't quite had enough time to look at players. So I kind of do that sometimes when I'm driving, is just continue to look at the threats. So it's so critical to kind of assess the beginning of the battle. Now, what I do on this particular game is I move up the right flank, and I notice as I go that I'm really not getting a lot of support on the right flank, so I slow down. So this is, again, controlled aggression. I notice not only where the enemies are, I notice where my allies are, and more importantly, where my allies are not. So as I start to play here, I get some cover. I know, sure as I'm playing Cliff, there's going to be somebody that goes up into the middle towards the lighthouse. So I'm preparing to take shots into the hill there towards the lighthouse, all the while trying to assess, okay, we've got 3 enemies spotted. That's on the 1-2 line. That leaves 12 enemies that are unaccounted for. Well, actually 11 because they've already have one that has died. So I'm quickly looking at, they're already capped. All right, no problem. That's not really a big deal here on Cliff. But I do notice, yep, sure enough, they do already, oh my goodness, there's 2 people on the hill. And the first thing I do is they take a shot at the A32, which again is a threat, and I start to take him out first, right? Because I've assessed that he's the biggest threat. And then I notice the M5 Stuart, an American Stuart, not a big threat, but since the A32 backed down, notice I quickly leave the Stuart as soon as the A32 comes back up. I'm staying focused on my threat, and I shoot multiple times. I damage him quite a bit where he is forced to back down off the hill. Then I notice, there's a tank destroyer, also a threat. So I pull forward, shoot him, and then I notice I'm getting hit from the right, so now I'm in a crossfire. At this point, I have someone firing from my right. I have the A32 still on the hill, which I've damaged considerably, but he is still a threat to me, and I have a tank destroyer off to my left. Guess what? I look up, and I have 2 allies, right, on my mini-map here that are below the ridge line. That means I am taking all of these enemies, and there's 3 that I know about. There may be more, and I'm taking all these on. So guess what I have to do? I have to retreat. So the first thing I do is take assessment of the situation. I note that, hey, this is not going to be a successful outcome. So I quickly move away from my cover spot and try to get down the hill. As I do, I throw one into the tank destroyer, and then I'm down the hill. And I also noted that there was an enemy behind me, which was isolated. So now I get hyper aggressive. All right. So not only did I notice that these guys were below the ridge line, but I also noticed that there was a enemy tank behind me when I was up on the hill. So I could stay up here, try to fight 3-4 people at a time, or I could just get the isolated guy and get hyper aggressive on him, which I do. And you'll see that I end up taking this gentleman out. Again, not trying to make examples of anybody, but this M5 Stuart is not an overall threat. Again, bad shooting on my part. I do eventually hit him. My ally does take him out. And then I note there is a tank destroyer now down on the main plateau here, and I have to take him out because he's a threat. So I do so because he's isolated. We still have several people up on this ridge line, and I have to be careful not to get spotted. So I'm just trying to feel out where they're at, and I'm trying to figure out, hey, did they move up? And sure enough, the light tank has moved up. So now I'm sitting here thinking, well, what position can I go to that will give me an opportunity to continue to try to take out guns of the fight, but not get myself completely annihilated. And so I quickly move back towards the back of the map. I do see that we have another person isolated back here. So guess what I do? I get hyper aggressive, I go after him, right? And luckily my allies take him out, and I still have not taken any significant damage. This is my first mistake in the game. Because I'm so worried about getting spotted, I drive right into a rock because I'm looking at my mini map and not watching where I'm driving. So that does happen even to great players, but I do get turned up without getting shot. I position myself. I try to get shots on the 1-2 line. I'm not able to do that, so I'm going to have to move away from this position and now really get out and see what I can do. It is actually, at this point, it's 10-4. It's 10-4, and I'm completely in a defensive mode. I was in a defensive mode pretty much the moment I left the hill. But I noticed that even though I'm in a defensive mode, when I have the opportunity to attack an enemy that is isolated, I take it. And that equals success in World of Tanks. All right, so we're going to move back towards the hill here because I now know with a minute left, I have to make a play on the cap. I know it's a high risk. I know I'm going to be taking on a lot of tanks, but I've got to get up to that cap circle because my allies are in no position to help me. I quickly see the Stuart pull around. I put several shots into him. Eventually, I'm going to take him out here. Boom, he's gone, and I know that they're still on the 1-2 line trying to shoot me. So I move into the middle of the map as quickly as possible, trying to get over. At this point, I'm too late. I got 10 seconds. There's no way I'm going to be able to get to the cap circle. So I just get myself so I can't get spotted from the A32 up on top of the hill, and by that time, the timer's already ran out. I was close to getting over to the cap circle to uncap them, but I just didn't have enough time because I had to take out the Stuart before I progressed to the cap circle. So kudos to the Stuart because he made me derail my attack on the cap circle, which really allowed them to win the game. So let's talk a quick second about the final results of the game. I was able to put down about 11, just over 1,000 damage, only 66 assisted, and that's a little frustrating because I had spotted at least 2 tanks, and there late in the game I felt like there was a lot of assist opportunity my teammates just couldn't seem to help with. But let's dive into the scoreboard and really see what was going on here and why we performed well. Clearly doing well more than our tank damage, probably 3-4 times or close to 4 times our tank hit points. But we couldn't seem to pull that battle back from the brink. So let's take a look at the scoreboard here as I let the video run here a little longer. Yeah. We look at okay. So the scoreboard kind of really tells the story. And I did do a video on the scoreboard and how to really read and assess the scoreboard. So I'll just quickly highlight it here. The gist of the story is how many tanks did their hit points or more and really help propel us towards a win. Well, on our side we have 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, maybe 5, maybe. So 5 tanks. Well, how many did the enemy team have? 1, 2, we'll call it 3 since we counted this one. 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. So look at how narrow. Even though the score was pretty lopsided at the end, it was pretty narrow a margin. If a few of these players had stepped up and had just done a little more damage, or even spotted a little bit more for other teammates so that they could get damage, I mean this would have been a different result. And so kudos to the M5, or I'm sorry, it was the M5A1 Stuart there at the end that really stepped up. Obviously a decent player. He had 642. He had 2 kills and 4 assists. So he was doing pretty well in that battle himself. Tried to cut me off, and he delayed me in my attack on the cap circle, which really allowed them to cap out. Now, some players will think, well, gee whiz, you should have went to the cap circle earlier, and I think I probably would have had I had some kind of assistance, but I knew there were other tanks up on that plateau. I knew the A32 was still probably trying to get shots on me. As you can see, he was still in the battle. And notice, because I knew he was a threat, it's a premium tank, and he went to the hill, I knew he was a threat, and because I kept him locked down, he didn't really have that good of a game in an A32, right? So by by assessing threats, by controlled aggression, you can have successful games yourself, even though your team isn't quite getting the win. I would have loved to have won this game, but I just couldn't pull it back with so many tanks still left on the battlefield and so little time to get to the cap circle. But there it is, guys. Actual gameplay from JBoz. And yes, I do play actually the game. I don't just give advice. But this video is about controlled aggression. I thought I'd give you some good examples of how to be aggressive, and then at times not be aggressive, so that really there's a distinction in the game. And of course, I was in a light tank, and that plays very differently from a tank destroyer or a heavy or an artillery, or in some cases even some slower mediums. So you really have to think about your tank. You have to know your tank. All these concepts that I've talked about in these other videos are beginning to come together, and you're now seeing gameplay, and now you're starting to see me apply what I've told you will make you a better World of Tanks player. Hopefully you like this video, guys. Hit that like button if you did. If you like what we're doing here at JBoz Gaming, giving you guys tips and tricks, hit that subscribe. It helps the channel grow. And of course, if you want to see or at least get notified when the next video drops, ring that bell. All right, guys, good luck, and we'll see you on the battlefield.